What up, y'all? Humble Among here with a special podcast recap and review. Today, I'm going to be talking about Necro on the No Jumper podcast a couple of days ago, really almost a week ago now. I just found out about this a couple of days ago, though, and was very excited to see that Necro was on No Jumper. We've had Twisted, we've had ICP, we've had recently Gmo Ski, and now Necro. I think it's about time we get Ouija Mac up on No Jumper. So everybody tweet at No Jumper and Adam22, and let's see if we can get Ouija Mac on No Jumper. Anyway, Necro was on No Jumper, though, and boy, was this a doozy. So I'm going to go through and kind of recap and review, show a few clips of this. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. No Jumper, please don't copyright strike me. I think I'm using fair use here this time. Yeah, we're going to dive right in, though. He opens the podcast asking if he can use the F word. The other F word. They actually bleep that word because it's so early in the podcast, he can't really get away with using it. He talks about being mad at DJ Vlad for not feeling the Murder Life song that he rapped over Eminem's and Dr. Dre's Forgot About Dre song back in the day. It was on a mixtape gimmick. Apparently, he gave a copy of that mixtape to DJ Vlad, and he was not feeling the song, and that pissed Necro off because he felt that he rapped better than Eminem on that song, or on that beat. He says Cool G Rap, NWA, and Ghetto Boys are his main influences and why he raps brutal. He then mispronounces misogynist.
I ended up being called a misogynist by every female in the business.
Right.
He talks a lot about Eminem throughout the podcast, but right here he talks a little bit about Eminem and how no one wanted to sign a white boy after Eminem was signed. The record industry was kind of like no more white boys is how he put it. He also says he had the same law offices as Eminem, had the same lawyers, and so he allegedly had some inside baseball. He talks about Fat Beats 12-inch deals. All these New York rappers back in the day had these Fat Beats singles, these 12-inch deals that they were doing. Fat Beats Records was a record label. It was also a record store. He says that's how he became famous in New York City. He talks about Vanilla Ice, talks about being called Vanilla Ice, growing up in a black neighborhood, growing up white and Jewish in a black neighborhood. Then he talks about being a white rapper and dropping the N-bomb. He talks specifically about an all-hip-hop interview he did back in the day where he used that word throughout the interview, apparently, and he caught a lot of heat for it. He even asked Cool G Rap if it was okay if he used that word on their record, The Godfathers. Cool G Rap, by the way, did say it was okay, but Necro chose to not use it as to not distract from his dope rapping skills with there's a white rapper using that word, which I'm kind of like, Necro, you knew, like, logically, you knew then that it was distracting from your product anyway, being a white rapper using it. So why were you using it? Anyway, my interjection there of my opinion on that subject. White rappers don't use the N-word. He says he hasn't used it in 10 years and then uses it later in the interview. And I think earlier in the interview, he had used it as well, talking about how they planned Eminem, like the music industry planned Eminem. He even says he thinks the blonde hair was part of the marketing scheme, the marketing plan for Eminem. Talking about being shadow banned on YouTube and rapping about human trafficking. If y'all haven't seen Necro sexually harassing women on the streets of New York City, the human trafficking, he's talking about his music video for White Slavery, which is a song that basically talks about human trafficking, straight up. Go check out the music video for White Slavery. It's actually pretty fucking over the top and hilarious. He then talks about the I Need Drugs video, which is also rather infamous and over the top and hilarious. The I Need Drugs video, he basically shoots his Uncle Howie and Uncle Howie's drugged out friend Mordecai using heroin in a dirty ass hotel room. I think you can find this video on YouTube. Go fucking look at it. He says that the video's been deleted and re-uploaded so many times that he thinks he'd have 100 million views if it was the same original uploaded video. I think he means across all platforms, including MySpace, though. He then talks about his college films and putting them out on VHS. It's actually how he released the I Need Drugs music video, was on these VHS tapes they used to sell on necrohiphopproduct.com, I believe was the website back in the day. We had a local video store called Video 2020, and I remember back in the day we used to go up to the counter and we'd ask for like the most obscure film titles we could think of, knowing full well they didn't have the shit in the store. And I used to ask for Necro films. He talks about the hip-hop scene in New York City at the time. He talks about Raucous Records, how he brought I Need Drugs to Raucous Records and they turned him down. He talks about Uncle Howie and his drugged out friend Mordecai and the I Need Drugs music video that I just described to you. He says that Mr. Hyde shot that music video and that, yeah, Mr. Hyde's his oldest friend, his best friend for over 20 years. He then calls himself a weed veteran, talks about being a weed dealer, selling cheap weed in fat nicks. He would buy cheap weed and sell it in the fattest nicks he could, and he was the only guy delivering at the time, he said. That's how he became a popular weed dealer. He mentions chocolate tie. Necro wipes sweat off his brow several times through the interview and calls himself a fat guy, but then says he is getting in shape, that he is a boxer. Talks about being banned from Europe in 26 countries. Adam22 equates Necro's rapping style to a metal influence, which is pretty obvious. Necro agrees. Necro talks about that on and off throughout the interview, talking about thugging around NYC with machetes and shit. He talks about the Switzerland show that got him banned from Europe, and now there was a beef with a local opener. Says that he has a spidey sense when it comes to drama or beef. Talks a little bit about not needing security or needing security. He talks about DJ Academics disrespecting the legends and pioneers of hip-hop. I guess he called them dusty or dirty. Talking about legends not making money back in the day and how that there are systems set up for artists to make money, like a merch guy that'll swoop in and be like, we can make merch for you, blah, 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 blah. Then they mention Africa Bambaataa in the whole room erupts in laughter. I assume Mr. Hyde erupts in laughter. They talk a little bit about that in KRS-One. Adam asks Necro to finish the Europe story. So basically, Necro's all over the place in this interview, by the way. He says local openers were roughing up Necro's homie Drew from England in the pit, and Necro got involved. It was 8 versus 4. 8 locals and security, from what I understand, versus Necro's 4. Necro was arrested in Switzerland. He got out, but yeah, had to write an apology letter to get back into Europe. And then he calls Switzerland Snitcherland. He talks about fighting and settling beef. Necro talks about the safe way to stab someone.
You can stab each other as long as it's not fatal. Don't hit the organs. Don't hit the jugular veins. Don't hit the organs. Stab over here.
Bro, I've seen people in England fighting each other with
and carrying a machete in New York City instead of a gun back in the day, apparently because you could fit it down your leg and you can run with it better. He said that when he went to Canada, that the country made him hire security to protect the crowds from them. He talks about the Mobb Deep influence when The Infamous came out. His song Robbery, how you can hear that influence from Mobb Deep on that song. Necro says there are no good dumplings in New York anymore after COVID. And he challenges you, the viewer, to let him know about good dumplings, good pork dumplings in New York City. He says there's no good ones anymore. He talks a little bit about being in a metal band at 12 years old, playing guitar, really technical death metal. Says he had a yellow warlock back in the day. Talks about new rappers wearing metal shirts and calls them posers. A lot of being compared to Eminem talk going on throughout the interview once again. Necro keeps burping throughout the interview and excusing himself.
Excuse me.
He talks about the Sexorcist gimmick and calls himself the illest sex rapper on the planet. Quotes Nas and says the N-word again. Adam asks if Necro does the stuff in these songs, and Necro keeps the gimmick alive and sort of sideswipes the answer. Adam says that he's going to have Necro sit down and react to current artists. Please do this. I'd love to see this. Adam actually says a couple of times throughout the interview that he would love to have Necro back. Even at the end, I think twice in a row he says that he wants to have Necro back. That's going to be fucking dope. I want to see more Necro podcast content. There's gatekeeping talk, talking about gatekeeping in hip-hop, and if it's good or bad. Necro says that he was gate-kept back in the day. Yeah, I kind of wish they would have gone a little bit more into this, especially Necro being gate-kept back in the day. I'd love to hear more about that. KRS-One and Ice-T dissing Soulja Boy. KRS-One and Nelly beef. And old head haters. Talks about KRS-One checking his jewels out at Rock the Bells, checking Necro's jewels out. Necro used to have a really blinged out N logo, which is rather ironic when you consider he likes to use that word so much. Anyway, Adam asks about the bad boy era, and Necro says it was a little gay. He calls horrorcore cheesy.
Okay, people were doing horrorcore. Horrorcore is when you were kind of cheesy. The beats weren't boom bap. They weren't New York sounding. They didn't have the edge of like a Pete Rock, Large Professor, Premier, Marley Marl type Dre beat. They were like more like Casio beats, like, you know, like corny horror. I didn't like that.
He calls horrorcore cheesy, which is something that Necro has been on for a long time. I remember back in the day, Necro used to talk shit about horrorcore, used to talk shit about Juggalo rappers, calling it all cheesy and that it's not realistic. That's still kind of the rap he's on these days. He talks about reality being gory. He keeps using a metaphor of a little kid who sees someone's brains getting blown out and how it's on the ground and the little kid sees it. He keeps using this metaphor. Did this happen to Necro as a kid? Did Necro see something really fucking violent like this in the hood? Is Necro this child? Adam asks Necro if he watches murders on the internet. Necro says sometimes, but doesn't go out of his way to find it, which the Necro hip-hop forums back in the day might say different. They get into that a little bit later, I think. Necro talks about his music being art.
I like art. I like creating hip-hop that's brutal.
Right.
Calls himself the king of death rap.
Right.
Notice Necro in 2022, I'm the king of death rap.
Right.
Adam then asks about other horrorcore artists from the past, and this is where it gets interesting.
Right. So how do you look at like yourself in comparison to all like the hardcore artists from the past? Because one thing when I think
give
of
me an example.
Okay, when I think of your career trajectory, I kind of feel like in some ways you could have had the same thing that happened to ICP.
Adam asks about ICP being canceled.
ICP got canceled for being offensive. And granted, they had the viral marketing gimmick of wearing the makeup and everything, but it feels like
Necro then talks about ICP.
And I always
interesting that you mention ICP.
I always wonder if
I have
ICP
a big history with them.
I wonder if the label was in on that. If the label like sort of strategically was like, we're going to get it pulled from shelves because it's going to be on the news. Because I want to
talk ICP with me?
Sure, yeah.
But anyway, Necro talks a little bit about ICP. Shouts out Joe and Jump.
ICP, okay, first of all, shout out to Violin J and his brother. Jump Steady.
Yeah.
If I messed up anything, you know, my bad.
Okay.
They're cool dudes.
Says he always hasn't seen eye to eye with the Juggalos.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I haven't always saw eye to eye with the Juggalo community.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like on certain things, because ICP are like headlining of everything.
Right.
And in my world, Necro's a headliner.
Yeah.
So it clashes. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
They're cool dudes. But now we're going to talk reality.
Right.
Okay. In New York City, nobody was listening to ICP. It was not respected.
Seems fair.
It would be considered as whack hip hop.
Right.
In the Midwest, that's where they blew up. Okay, so when I was coming up, nobody was listening to that. I've even spoken with Violent J on the phone, and he admits, yeah, Necro, I know you're that lyrical shit, and I'm whatever.
Their biggest fan base was in the flyover states. Let's be real.
Okay, and you got to understand one thing about ICP that's way different than Necro. Right. ICP says that they're the most underground band ever, blah, blah. They had an MTV hit, My Homies,
right,
which got played regular rotation on MTV. You're not underground anymore if MTV plays you.
Once again, please, no jumper, don't hit me with a fucking copyright strike. ICP isn't underground because they had homies on MTV, as you just saw there.
With regular rotation.
But I mean,
in my opinion, listen, we could debate
probably
it.
Used to play like random Cannibal Corpse videos twice a week and
that
shit
was
like that, right?
Ball. No, but ICP, My Homies was getting regular rotation with
But don't you think them getting
shit.
canceled by Disney was the thing that actually made them part of the public consciousness?
No, they had fans at that point. They were building this shit.
I just think they got so much bigger from that.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I can't speak on that. You know,
ultimate marketing.
All I can say is they were always underground doing their thing, but they eventually got a deal. I think it was on Def American or something, and they had a video out, and it blew them up way bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never had anything like that.
Having that moment of the labels
that got
and the media pumping you up.
Yeah.
And yeah, he claims he learned everything from Master P, not ICP. I can see that. ICP does claim the same thing, that they learned their business tactics from Master P. So maybe Necro read the same book they were passing around Psychopathic back in the day. Once Necro hit the point in his career that he felt he would not get a deal because of Eminem, that's when he decided to just do it himself. Said he grossed $1 million out of his apartment in 2004.
You know, and I ended up grossing $1 million out of my apartment in 2004.
Yeah.
And admits he got burnt out. This was the crazy year where Necro tried to put out 12 albums in 12 months. He only ended up putting out 10, by the way. Great albums, though. He produced every beat, I believe, on all 10 of those albums. But he did get burned out, and he admitted that in this interview, which is interesting to have him admit that all these years later, because it was very clear to me back in the day he did get burnt out trying to do that many albums. Anyway, talking about being shadow banned on social medias. Adam then asks about Nems and Necro taking Nems on tour back in the day, talking about Nems kind of being Necro's artist in a way before Nems blew up and went viral. The year was 2004, says the Psychological Records brand was the hottest in the underground, was the hottest record label in the underground. That was the 10 albums in 12 months year. That was the $1 million gross year. Necro then talks about his forums and says that's how he met Nems. He says in 2008, though, he was trying to build his roster further, and Nems was on the message board as Nems Murder Fest, and he posted a music video. And Necro liked it, sent him a message. They ended up doing a bunch of shows. He brought him out to Cali, said he smacked a guy who was on tour with them for offering Nems drugs, but would not name who that was. Said he parted ways with Nems because Nems just kept asking for too much money. But he shouts out Nems and says in 2022, there is no bad blood. I'd love to see what Necro has to say about Cage, though. Says a song from the Godfather album is on the official Nas Illmatic playlist and kind of marks out that someone in the Nas camp must be a fan of Necro's songs, at least somewhat. Says he has 10 different streams of income from his music. Says that he takes Viagra. Adam asks if Necro fucks dead girls and the name. I guess Necro's name was originally Necrophiliac, which I don't think I realized Necro's original name was Necrophiliac. And he gives credit to Bobbito for basically donning him as Necro. He mispronounced misogynist again.
That, you know, maybe some people, a lot of women thought I was misogynistic. I couldn't get.
Says the first day that him and his brother Ill Bill were in Glenwood Project that they ripped up all of their comic books. Necro talking about the difference between performing at metal shows and rap shows. Says he got more confidence at the rap shows than he had at the metal shows. Adam says several times he wants Necro back for another stream. Talks about doing merch himself back in the day and beefing with FedEx drivers because they wouldn't come into his apartment to pick up packages. Necro does big up the UPS, though, and he says that UPS is the good guys. And Necro gets a bunch of plugs off at the end. Anyway, this interview is really fucking entertaining. I certainly hope we get more Necro and No Jumper content. But I'd love to see Ouija Mac on motherfucking No Jumper, so let's get that done. Anyway, if you like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe gimmick, hit that bell gimmick. We're trying to hit 3,000 subscribers before the end of October, before Halloween. So if you could hit that subscribe gimmick, it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much for watching this. I think I'm going to do a Kanye video next about the Drink Champs thing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Once again, No Jumper, please don't hit me with a copyright strike. Anyway, I love y'all. Whoop, whoop. Have a good night.
Once again, just respectfully and clearly, not bragging.